Recording on UtahJazz.com, Roundball Roundup, JP Chunga with Tim MacMahon, ESPN. Tim, thank you so much for taking some time.
Howdy, partner. How you doing? I'm fresh off watching at least some members of the Utah Jazz in Dallas.
Midway point of the season, things could get interesting. And looking through the first half, I think I'll start there with you, Tim. Cover this team, cover the league, Hoop Collective, Howdy Partners, a published author. As you look at 41 games into the Jazz season, what is your impression?
There's a lot there. Number one, I would say that there is a legitimate core of a competitive team already at least forming, if not in place. And obviously, Lauri Markkanen is an all-star caliber player. Keyonte George is like, to me, if you're a Jazz fan, that's the thing that you're most excited about is Keyonte George's breakout season and the fact that it's becoming clear that he can be part of the foundation for years to come. And then, Ace Bailey's not putting up some of the numbers that other rookies in the top five are, but they are very, very excited about Ace Bailey. And, trust me, they are as optimistic about his star potential as they were the night that they drafted him, and his ability to impact the game on both ends of the floor. So with those three guys, that's a core moving forward. I would say it appears that the Jazz are pretty determined to add another core player in the draft this year, as they have a top 8 protected pick that's owed to Oklahoma City. Not sure if there's been a lot of talk around Salt Lake City about that development. But, they'll add another mid to high lottery pick to the mix. And then look, next year, the creative license on injury reports, I believe, is going to be over. And hopefully the Jazz turn the corner to where winning as many games as possible is the priority. But even this year, look, man, this is a team that over the last however many few weeks or so, they've got wins over the Spurs and the Pistons, and the Cavaliers. I think if aiming for a play-in berth was the priority this year, that the Jazz could, that's a goal that would be within the Jazz's reach. And then, I think next year it goes from draft positioning as, the pretty clear priority to, okay, there's a core in place. And then, I think next year the Jazz are going to be in that play-in mix, which isn't a bad place to be if you're an ascending team, right? And I do think that we're going to see the Jazz as an ascending team next year.
Does the calculus on team building change seeing what Keyonte has done? Because he has been one of the big stories about this team. I don't know if you would have even addressed that question after year 2 with what he was putting up. The fact that he responded has to be encouraging to fans, front office, but looking broadly, does it change the way you approach going forward?
100%. 100%. And I'll just give you an example. I think that the Jazz now, obviously, they're going to be armed with cap space. And so, do they throw a max contract at Austin Reeves? Maybe not, because how much does, what does Austin Reeves bring you that Keyonte doesn't? He's a higher level player, but at that number, I don't know. It's such a huge thing to be able to say, hey, we've got a guy who can be a really good offensive player already in place. And think how much this has changed. There's been a lot of talk. Keontae's talked a lot about this, about the exit interview that he had with Will Hardy last year at the end of last season. And Will straight up told him, hey, if the front office asks me, are you a guy that we can bank on moving forward? I can't tell them yes right now. Well, that's changed because he is 100% part of this long-term plan, a foundation piece for the future. He's going to get I would think, probably a nice contract extension this summer, unless they, maybe they do decide to play it out in a restricted free agency, which is what's happening with Walker Kessler, which there's another conversation to be had there. Um, but yeah, they needed one of these young guys to really pop, and it wasn't clear if any of them were, and he absolutely has.
What has been the step in your eyes?
That, you know, I don't, I don't know, and that's something I'd have to ask, Will and some of the other coaches in terms of like specifics. But I mean, the simplest way to put it is he is consistently a really good offensive player. I mean, he's gone from like, he can score, but it's not very efficient. It's inconsistent to this is a dude who's going to give you 24 and 7 on a nightly basis. And by the way, has shown if you put the ball in his hands at the end of close games, he can, he's the reigning Cajones Factor Player of the Month, you know? So
A
that's
top
that's a,
award. Yeah.
absolutely. So that's a huge step. And yeah, like 24 and 7 guys don't grow on trees, especially at that age. So in terms of like specifically how he's gotten there, um, yeah, that's a good question, and it's a question I'd have to ask the coach. I mean, he's gotten stronger, but in terms of like what exactly has taken him from inconsistent, inefficient to this guy, I'd have to ask.
I mean, the mental approach certainly has to be lauded with how he responded to the exit interview,
Mhm.
which is something that Will has been wont to do with the way that he challenged Walker in his year after he joined USA Basketball. He had a little bit of a disappointing sophomore slump and
Yeah.
then responds in year 3 to the same coaching that Will has done. What is it about the way that he's approached things, Will, that the players have responded? Because we've even seen videos of him coaching on the sidelines where he's getting pretty intense.
Listen, you don't have to wonder what he's thinking. He's going to tell you, he's going to look you in the eye, he's going to be very direct. Sometimes he'll be loud, but there's a baseline of the relationships that he's developed with these guys where it's like, look, I'm not telling you this for my benefit. I'm telling you this because we're trying to get the best out of you, and then that benefits the franchise. So I think all these guys understand Will is looking out for their best interests. He's trying to put them in a position where they're getting big contracts and they're getting bigger roles, and all the things that are hoping to accomplish happen. Because if all those things happen, then that means that the Jazz are getting better and the Jazz are turning the corner into becoming competitive. But you know, he builds relationships with guys. He's very direct and detailed with his communication, and the guy can coach. The guy knows what he's doing.
Lauri Markkanen has recovered to his all-star level numbers that he had with the Jazz as he continues to show his value. When he plays, he has that caliber to be one of the best players in the Western Conference. What is it about this season that has allowed him to come back to those numbers?
I think he needs to play for the Finnish national team every summer. I mean,
Right.
every time he plays for his national team, he's come back and is on fire. But look, man, Lauri Markkanen has proven that this is the player that he is. Um, the situation is tough as much as he's in and out of the lineup. Hopefully, this will be the last year that that's the case. Um, but he's proven from really the time that he stepped into a Jazz uniform, and was given the opportunity to have this kind of a role that he's an all-star caliber player. And people still ask a lot about the possibility of Lowry being traded. It would take just a shocking type of offer for that to be something that the Jazz consider. He is absolutely, positively, prominently in their plans for the foreseeable future.
Does the age impact that?
Well, no, because look, 5 years is that's a long, long window in the modern NBA. and that's basically his prime, right? And so, 4 years from now, I think we can talk about the age, but not right now. I mean, again, what I can tell you is when they look at their core, they're looking at Lauri, Keyonte, Ace Bailey, and then some of these other guys are going to have chances. And then they still do consider Walker Kessler to be part of their core moving forward. I anticipate his restricted free agency to be very interesting, but he is a restricted free agent, which obviously means that the Jazz will have the opportunity to match any offer that he might get.
Does his injury affect anything on that front?
No, I mean, I don't think it does. Obviously, it's not ideal, but I think there's going to be a pretty robust market for for Walker. Um, I think the Washington Wizards lurk as a strong possibility, and that's a team that obviously has a ton of cap space. And then I'd keep an eye on the Lakers. And let's just be honest: if you're a young big man, um, catching lobs from Luka Doncic and anchoring a defense in Hollywood doesn't sound like a terrible situation, but he doesn't necessarily get to choose where he's playing. And I know that the Jazz are prepared to put what they consider to be a very reasonable offer for a quality starting center on the table. His agents at CAA might feel like Walker is an elite center and deserves that kind of money. And I think that the Jazz's approach in that situation would be like, okay, well, if you can get that kind of offer, get it, and then again, they have the right to match.
Exactly. Restricted free agency allows them to have some wiggle room with that.
Yeah. Now, what I would say is, look, maybe they do get an offer, and the Jazz look at it and say, God, that's just too. And then there's going to be. There is a little bit. It can get dicey because if there's actually an offer sheet signed, then you can't do sign and trade. So the trick here is if you think he's actually going to get an offer at that level, it's kind of the cat and mouse game of, okay, if Walker's leaving, can you work out a sign and trade where you're getting assets in return? And if not, it might just be in the Jazz's best interest to say, yeah, we think that's a little bit high, but we'd rather have him overpaid and under contract than leaving for nothing.
Ace Bailey, they are very high on him, his talent level, the reason why they selected him at 5. He's responded by doing things that people who were watching him at Rutgers didn't necessarily expect him to be doing. The defense, the little things, rebounding, cutting off the ball. What has been the response through 41 games of having Ace Bailey on the team?
It's funny. When I talk to the Jazz coaches, they'd bring up defense first with him.
He had some possessions against Donovan and Darius Garland on Monday, defensively, that were really, really encouraging for a player who is a kid. That's why, from my perspective, someone who is a little wide-eyed, that he's committed on that end, it's even more impressive.
Well, and also when you talk about the Jazz core moving forward, look, Keontae's probably never going to be what you would call a lockdown defender, but Ace's versatility on that end, like there's a chance this is a guy who's like, hey, 1 through 3, and again as it grows, maybe even 1 through 4. You're taking the toughest assignment and, allows them to kind of protect Keyonte on that end of the floor. And I think just stylistically, there is a fit. You asked about the age timeline, but I'm just talking about like the on the floor style. There is a fit with Keyonte and Ace and Lauri Markkanen. And Lauri's a guy who can fit with a lot of different players because he's a big time scorer who doesn't need the ball in his hands a lot, right? He's a big time scorer who his style of play creates space for other guys to work. Like he's not ISOing, right?
The gravity.
There's not a lot of dribble to his game. He's a shooter. He's a spot up shooter. He's an off the move shooter. He's a cutter. He's a finisher, literally. But and as Ace grows, there's, Ace wants to dribble the ball, and he'll probably grow into that. Keontae's obviously an off dribble creator, but has shown he's also a really good facilitator. So I think those guys will fit as a trio pretty well together as the Jazz turn the corner, hopefully next season, into being a competitive team on a consistent basis.
I bet Ace wants to dribble, but he really has bought into the Spurs Jazz .5 basketball.
Yeah.
Right? Like he has done the things where he's making an instant decision whether to get off, shoot. He's making it really simple for himself, and the Jazz are taking it slowly with him before they keep adding and adding more onto his offensive palette.
Right. And he's also like, he's shown the ability to be a really dynamic cutter, offensive rebound. I mean, some of the putbacks that he's had, I mean, like they're the kind of things that just, like make you cover your eyes after you see it. Whoa. Um, the way he just flashes athletically at that size, it's impressive. Again, there's a long way to go for him. There's a lot of development, mentally, skill wise. But man, he's got big, big, big time potential.
Wrapping up with the other team that they played on Thursday, Dallas. Cooper Flagg was sitting next to Mark Cuban. What's going on there with this franchise as they have that situation to sort out, but they also have Anthony Davis, who is injured once again?
Well, one thing that's clear is the priority is building around Cooper Flagg. They got a gift from the basketball gods, or if you want to have lottery conspiracy theories, whatever you want to call it. But Cooper Flagg is every bit of the stud that people thought he was going to be coming in the draft. What he's doing as a guy who was 18 for the first couple months of the season, at that age, really the only comparison is LeBron. And I'm not saying he's going to be LeBron James, but I'm telling you, this is a guy who, I'll put it to you like this. If you put the over under at 10 all NBA selections, I'm going to take the over. He's going to have a heck of a career, man. And they're in a really precarious situation as they do pivot into building around him, because they gave up so much to build a finals team around Luka. This is the last year they control their first round pick on Cooper Flagg's rookie contract. 27, 28, 29, and 30, either swaps or outright or out the door. So they've got to get a dude to pair with him in this draft. Obviously, the AD situation. We'll see if he's still on the Mavericks roster after the trade deadline. That's murky. They do plan to have Kyrie Irving back next season. Whether Kyrie comes back this year is another TBD. I think Jazz fans could understand why I would argue that it's probably not in anybody's best interest to have Kyrie on the court this season. Big loss for the Jazz last night, by the way. Got a rematch on Saturday. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done to take advantage of the gift of getting Cooper Flagg with a 1.8% chance to win last year's lottery.
There's a plan, and then there's lucking into the top of the lottery. San Antonio's been able to beat OKC 3 times. They had the 4th matchup earlier this week. You've seen this become a budding rivalry between these two franchises, the Chet versus Wemby of it all. How did they get those 3 wins and then lose to the Jazz after the 3? I mean, it was amazing. It was one of the stranger results of the NBA season in my mind.
How about that Pistons, Spurs, Jazz win both
Double?
back-to-back?
Yeah.
Didn't see that coming.
No.
Listen, man, the Spurs are a young team, obviously loaded with young talent, but there's going to be ups and downs with young teams. And you hear a lot about the challenges of handling adversity. There are a lot of challenges that come along with handling success in the NBA too. And, you can imagine, like, dude, you just beat the defending champion Thunder 3 times, and wins 2 and 3 were butt whoopings. Like the Spurs were riding high, and the Jazz coming into, I think there's a little bit of a kind of a natural letdown, and they weren't doing they weren't sharp in that game. They weren't playing with the same kind of edge in the game, and they went. It wasn't just that game. The Spurs went through a little bit of a lull, but again, that's not necessarily shocking when three of your four best players are, I believe, I think Wemby's 22, Steph Castle's younger than that, and Dylan Harper's a teenager. So there's going to be some ups and downs, man. The Spurs are ahead of schedule too. That's just a simple fact. Like making the top six this year, I think was a really good goal for the Spurs, and they're a top three team in the Western Conference right now, and they're yeah contender. We can debate the definition there. They're at least a legitimate challenger for OKC right now, with a super young core, and the Spurs are going to be a force in the Western Conference and in the NBA for a long, long time to come because they've got, the modern day version of Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker. They've got their trio that I think will be in place for the next decade plus.
I was surprised at how reliant they were on Fox, who wasn't there for the Jazz game, how they have been. I mean, he was shooting the breaks off the ball through the first couple months of the season. The shooting has tailed off from all of the guards, seemingly over this little swoon. But how much they needed Fox on the floor against the Jazz, it was pretty glaring.
Yeah, and look, some of their other losses this season, like I'm thinking of the loss they had in Phoenix when that was, they're defending Wemby with Dylan Brooks, with Royce O'Neal, the wings were just kind of pushing him off his spot. And De'Aaron Fox wasn't there. The same thing happened against the Lakers a couple of nights later. And, I said three of their four best players are puppies. Fox is the exception there. Fox is he's in his prime, but he's the one veteran guy they have that can really take advantage of attention that's paid to Wemby. And, Wemby is as good as he is now, especially on the offensive end. He's still pretty early in his development. And that's what's scary is like, God, 3, 4, 5 years from now, he's going to be so much better. But there, you can really affect Wemby with physicality still and, by throwing a lot of bodies at him. And I think they need Fox just as much as anything. They need the savvy of Fox to be able to exploit that.
Houston is going through their own problems now. Mm-hmm. Are they contenders when it comes to the playoffs?
So Houston was definitely high on my list of potential challengers for OKC entering the season. I would say they're on the second tier of that at this point, and they're in a rough patch right now. I think they've lost, what is it now, 5 of 7. The point guard thing is an issue. They really miss Fred VanVleet. He's trying to come back for the playoffs. I think that's going to be awfully tough. And then, what is he, 7 months off of an ACL, even if he is able to actually be medically cleared? So they might be they might be a next year contender. They need VanVleet as much for just the nastiness, the intensity, the defensive edge that they lost when he went down and having to give up Dylan Brooks as part of the KD trade. So I would say they have a chance, but to me, the Nuggets and the Spurs have proven that they're on a different level than the Rockets are right now.
What's happened in the clutch? Is it come down to that point guard issue? Because earlier on this season, it was much better than what you're seeing as of late.
Yeah, and also, I will say during this stretch where they've really struggled, Alpi Şengün went down, he sprained his ankle, in the first, or 64 seconds into their road loss in Dallas. He's back now, but he's not completely healthy. So that's definitely a factor. When he was out, they completely fell off a cliff offensively when KD was out of the game. And so they're ramping KD's minutes up way too high for a 37-year-old. But yeah, I think just the structure and the organization and the execution down the stretch of games is a concern. And Amin Thompson is an amazing player. He's got an extremely bright future. He's a stud right now. In terms of playing point guard in the NBA, he's a rookie point guard who's in his third NBA season, if that makes sense. Reed Shepherd, he's basically a redshirt rookie. He didn't play a whole lot last year. And he's a six-man bucket getter. I don't know that he's a pure point guard. I'm not sure that he ever will be. So, yeah, they definitely miss just having that structure down the stretch when you're having to grind out possessions.
Do you get more joy out of Howdy Partners or Hoop Collective?
Howdy Partners, because Bontemps doesn't interrupt me on that because he's nowhere near it. Because, he's just, we're focused on the Lone Star State. And frankly, I don't want Bontemps anywhere near the state.
Tim MacMahon, ESPN. The book is over his shoulder. It's called The Wonder Boy. I got my copy. It was an excellent read. Tim, I appreciate you joining the show, Roundball Roundup.
I appreciate it, Juan Pablo, and adios amigos.